60 days that changed rock. Dave, I was browsing on iTunes the other day when I came across this section called 60 Days That Changed Rock. So in the year 1991, Dave, which was 30 years ago, hard to believe, in the span of 60 days, there were several huge rock albums that changed rock music forever. Okay. So you had August 12th, you had the Black Album by Metallica. August 27th, you had Pearl Jam 10. September 17th, you had Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. September 24th, you had Nirvana, Nevermind, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and Soundgarden's Bad Motorfinger, all on the same day. Okay, so it's kind of unbelievable the impact that all those records had. Like it really was the dawn of a new era in the 90s where all these classic albums were coming out. And I will remember because as you know, I have an older sister, and when those albums were coming out, she was a little bit older, so she had all those albums on CD. And I remember she had a CD player, and I would sneak into her room to like put on Pearl Jam and listen to 10 or listen to the Black Album or something, right? So it's just so incredible that within this 60-day period, it's almost like it was meant to be, that it was fate, that all these albums came out and really defined alt rock music for the 90s, but really continue to define alt rock music today. 30 years later, all those albums, Metallica putting out a Black Album reissue this Friday, 30 years later, those albums are still like the pinnacle of rock music.
Yeah, man, like the influence from those 8 weeks of release has gone on for 30 years. 30, like is there anybody in that group that isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? No. Is there anybody in that group that hasn't sold, over 50 million records? Is there any, like, it really set the tone and the threshold of what was to come for the 90s. And then well into the 2000s. And even now with the reissues of things, like who knew? Who would have known, like on the third month, like, wow, what just came out over the last 2 months is gonna shape everything. Rock radio, TV and movies.
All those albums still everything. On rock radio daily.
Everything. It changed everything. It was the soundtrack for Gen X. It's everything. Those 60 days, those records, without them, we probably wouldn't be having this podcast.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like it's that influential, and there's that many high profile artists that, we wouldn't be here, man. I know I wouldn't be here. Like without those records, without those bands, like, and without a lot of those bands' first records, there wouldn't be second records. So, you know what I mean? Like without Bad Motorfinger, there wouldn't be Super Unknown, and there wouldn't be, you know what I mean? There's just so many things that, it's amazing. Like that's crazy. There should be like a movie made about all that shit and everything, like.
Well, like the Smashing Pumpkins Gish came out in 1991 too, not within the same period as that, but like another great record. And I would think maybe if there was any other period in rock that would be comparable to that, would maybe be the late 60s, like 68 and 69, where you had the Beatles putting out the White Album, and you had the band putting out Big Pink, and you had Bob Dylan putting out, and the Stones putting out Let It Bleed, and all those records. I would say that's like comparable to being like a time when rock really started to take shape, or maybe some early 70s stuff when you had, Pink Floyd and Zeppelin and Sabbath all firing on all cylinders. That might be a comparable time. But otherwise, it's a crazy time. Like you're saying, like 30 years later, it's still on rock radio. They're still in movies. There's still, like you can't turn on rock radio without hearing Enter Sandman or Smells Like Teen Spirit or Jeremy or Alive or something, right? It's absolutely incredible that these 60 days, that in this period, that so much creativity was unleashed upon the world, and is still reverberating to this very day. So I just find that really exciting. And I found it cool that they were doing something on iTunes to commemorate all that, because I didn't even realize that. And I've seen it in some other places as well. People have been mentioning the anniversaries, and that 60-day period was such a huge revolutionary time in rock. But it's just it's something cool. I just thought it'd be worth mentioning on the show. Still listening to those records all the time. Here's the question though. Out of those records, the ones that we mentioned, which one is your favorite? Which one is really the one that you connect with the most?
Mine's got to be 10 by Pearl Jam.
I was going to say the same.
10 by Pearl Jam, and then Blood Sugar Sex Magic would probably be the second.
Yeah.
And then Nirvana, Nevermind,
Yeah.
probably.
I was pretty big on the Use Your Illusion albums too. Soundgarden, Bad Motorfinger, I wasn't into as much as Super Unknown. Right.
Yeah, Super Unknown to me, Super Unknown to me is one of the best riff rock records ever made.
Oh, it's so good.
Like it's on another level. Like everything about that record. If you're a guitar player and you're into rock, like hard rock, that record is, it's a masterpiece. So yeah, it definitely wouldn't have been Bad Motorfinger for me yet. Like even though I love that record now, but definitely if I'm, if it's 1991 and I'm jumping around my bedroom, it's definitely I had a special release. I think it was like the European release of 10. And the only extra thing on it was a version of Dirty Frank.
Yeah, I think my sister had that version too, the European version of the album.
Yeah. So it had I think it had a live, and then it had Dirty Frank on there too, which is a cool, funky. It actually sounds like Pearl Jam trying to be the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But so I'm definitely jumping around in my bedroom to Alive and Jeremy and all that stuff. So like, 100%. That's my go-to in those 60 days.
Yeah, for sure. When I was a kid, it might have like not been 91. It probably was like 92, 93. But I had like a little like cheap Casio keyboard, and I had some neighbor kids who lived across the street, and we would play together. And they would come over and we'd sit on my porch and we would do an air band to Jeremy. Right. I'd be like, Jeremy, so as you can see, Dave, I was always destined to play in a band because I was recruiting my neighbors to like come over and do air bands to Jeremy all the time with me.
I have a similar Casio keyboard when I was younger, probably around that time. I had a Casio, and a buddy from across the street would come over, and we would, because you could record songs on the Casio, like whatever you would play. Yeah. And I remember doing like a playback and like trying to write lyrics, and like my mom coming in the door like, "Oh, it sounds good, boys,"
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it was destiny, Dave. That was what set you on your path to musical greatness all these years later.
One broken Casio at a time.
Yeah, we're still breaking Casios to this day.
Yeah, man. Fuck Casios.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, 60 days that changed rock and roll. So it's pretty cool. Lots of classic albums. So let us know what you thought of the topics that we talked about on this week's Rock Squad podcast. Let us know what your favorite album is out of the ones that were released during this revolutionary time in rock and roll back in 1991.